My name is Freeze. Learn it well. Was the chilling sound of their doom. This is the way the world could end. And he's so ferocious. With ice. With a kiss.
With venom. I probably should have mentioned this. I'm poison. Poison ivy.
And the only man who can stop them. I Freeze. I'm Batman. Can't do it alone. Batman will watch his beloved Gotham perish. Buckle up, boys. There's a storm coming. Kill the heroes! It's a hockey team from hell! Cool party! Arnold Schwarzenegger. All right, everyone, chill! George Clooney. I got the mankind.
I know you've had your wild night.
Good night. Wild doesn't quite cover it. Chris O'Donnell.
Come join me. My garden needs tending.
She loves me and not you, and it's driving me crazy.
This is why Superman works alone.
So many people to kill. So little time.
Alicia Silverstone. And you are?
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about that person?
From the Batcave.
She knows who we are.
I guess we just have to kill her.
The Joel Schumacher film. Strength and courage.
Partners.
Honor.
Partners.
And loyalty. Freedom and justice. Partners. It all comes together. We're going to need that bigger cave. Batman and Robin. Surprise. Winter has come at last.
And welcome to episode 24, part 2 of the Movie Dawgs show. All right, everyone. We're there. We're almost done with this countdown, and this is going to be a rough one. I'm going to try to make this one short too, folks, because it's tough to talk about this movie. And every time I do talk about this particular movie, well, there's a lot of people, including my brother, God rest his soul, who would encourage or egg me on about talking about this movie and everything, because he got a kick of how I used to, rip this movie apart. So I don't think I'll be that extreme on this video, but I'll be fair and balanced. So anyway, we're going to talk about 1997's opus, Batman and Robin. And do support this channel, folks, and subscribe if you haven't done so. If you're new to the channel, it helps out a lot. Let's make this this year on the Movie Dawgs and just, the best it can ever be. So support and subscribe. And again, if you hadn't yet, like us on Facebook. And if you haven't yet, folks, check out our new sponsor, Fresh in the Flesh Tattoo. You can check out Tony on these instructions on this beautiful card that you see before you. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook. Again, folks, Tattoo Tony rocks. Check him out. And another way to support this channel, folks, hit that thumbs up. Like this video. Alright, folks. Let's see if I can get through this one without an embolism. Alright, well, because of the surprise and massive success that Batman Forever had been, Warner Brothers fast-tracked what would become Batman and Robin to have it ready in a year's time. You know, a lot of people kind of scratch their heads, and this happens to a lot of successful movies when they're about to make sequels, especially a franchise. It happened with this past Star Wars movies. They were popping out left and right, and this just wasn't a good idea. Batman Forever basically competed with Batman and Robin, because around the time that it was coming out on VHS, Batman and Robin was coming out in theaters. And it just these movies need time to settle down and disappear and then come back. Maybe 4 or 5 years tops is probably be the best for a movie of this magnitude. I also, this movie, it came out number 1, June of 97. Again, it wasn't that far away from the last one. And it had a lot of problems, when it came to the development of this. It just felt unnecessary new, sets they could and new gizmos for Batman to play with, which they could have easily have made kept the old suits and the previous vehicles and stuff, but for some reason they had to go bigger and better, and Batman and Robin was no exception, and that's one of the things that hurt the film financially, was the overuse of money. Just way too much money spent. And Joel Schumacher has repeatedly, before he died, was always apologetic towards this. He blamed himself because he agreed to do this. When he was approached to do this, he was told, and this term has been more used in the years following Batman and Robin, but at that time it was a very unheard term. But he had mentioned that he had never heard this term when it was brought up to him by the studio heads, that they wanted a more toyetic, family-friendly Batman. Now, toyetic, of course, means we want a movie that can sell toys, because by the 90s, that's what really it was all about. Those toy spinoffs. And honestly, I have to say, Batman and Robin, with maybe the Batmobile, Batman and Robin toys sucked, because they weren't close to accurate to the film. They didn't look like none of the characters. The capes were molded onto the bodies, which, you'd either had to take it off and put Batman in the Batmobiles. It was just, it was a mess. Rushed is basically what you can say. Rushed. And a lot of the toys were concept art, and they didn't look like, as I said, looked like most of the people in the film. So that was the least of their troubles, though. The key component was, of course, the lead from the previous film, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer couldn't be in the movie because he was already contracted to do another movie, and he, was going to be available. And, of course, Joel Schumacher said, he was not mad for him doing the film, he was mad that it was brought up at the 0 hour. So, you don't know who was right or wrong. There was always rumors that they didn't get along or anything, but that's nor hearsay. Both guys, sadly, Joel Schumacher is no longer with us, and Val Kilmer, sadly, he's suffered throat cancer, and poor guy's lost his voice. But it was a shame, because I liked his portrayal as Bruce Wayne. I don't know if this film would have done it, what he did in the previous film, justice, because they were going so more lighthearted and kiddie-friendly, and I don't know if his brooding Batman would have worked in this film. Now, on paper, Batman and Robin had a great star-studded cast. A lot of up-and-comers, a lot of box office potential. And, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, who still at the time was a box office champ of all time. You had George Clooney, who was hot off ER while he was still on ER. And it was one of the hottest shows on television. You had Chris O'Donnell, who was really making a name for himself and being an up-and-coming actor. You had Alicia Silverstone, who was hot off those Aerosmith videos. And, I think she had just done Clueless, and her star was on the rise. And, of course, I had Uma Thurman, who Joel Schumacher claimed to be the most beautiful woman in Hollywood. Because he saw that scene that she was in when she was playing Venus in this movie called The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which I highly recommend, folks. If you find that film, watch it. It's a really fun film. But, again, on paper, it would have worked. I mean, George Clooney, he looked good in the cowl. He had that big square jaw. But, he was in an interview, he stated, the guy, shouldn't be brooding anymore. And he complimented Keaton and Kilmer before him that they had their own unique thing, and just something I guess he just felt like he couldn't replicate. But, he played Batman a little more lighter, played more of a father figure. They put a little bit more tension between Robin and Batman in this, too. Because, he's being more protective, overly protective, because he doesn't want to be responsible for Robin getting hurt. But, as I said, in the George Clooney costume, just, I don't know, it just didn't work with me either. Because I guess, again, Val Kilmer's costume in the previous film was really, really awesome looking. Now, Clooney and O'Donnell did have some decent chemistry together working. There wasn't really much for them to work with. As I said, the script needed more work, and it just wasn't ready. Keira Goldsmith was the one that wrote the screenplay, so don't know if that's bad or a negative, but it is what it is. But again, I think that the chemistry between Kilmer and O'Donnell was a little stronger. You were able to feel a better chemistry, and I'm sure it would have been even stronger if, they had done Batman and Robin right. But again, there was a conflict of clashing of personalities between the two characters that, it gave some depth in this film. But also is that you find out Alfred also is ill, and so there's some layers there, but they weren't really fleshed out well, and because the script was just so bad, and it was just stuck with one-liners and puns, and the visuals took over the story. Now, as I said in the previous film, the Robin costume in the previous film was dead on almost comic book accurate, really cool. Nothing was wrong with it. But of course, when it comes to them making new movies, the costume designers, they gotta, I guess, spend that money with what they're worth. So I don't know, but we basically in this film, we got Robin, but we ended up getting him into the likeness of Nightwing, which was Dick Grayson's grown-up version of Robin, and of course, they kind of modified it to the Nightwing logo to look more like a Robin on his chest. And as I said, I didn't like it. It really should have just be a more sleek version of the previous costumes, just to make it still look like Robin. But again, when you take too many liberties of a property, it also, it tends to kind of backfire on you. But funny thing is, Chris O'Donnell did get to keep this costume. He has it in a crate, I think, in his basement. So, but hey, kudos to him. He's got a Robin suit for life. But again, I was just never the color. I mean, if it was that he was Nightwing, yeah, I would have been okay with this. But the fact that he's Robin in this, again, it just didn't work well. Now this time around, we have three heroes. Batgirl was introduced into this film, and she was portrayed by Alicia Silverstone. Again, I had nothing wrong with that with it. Beautiful woman, still is. But they did some changing around here. She's not Commissioner Gordon's daughter. She's actually Alfred's niece in this. So I guess they wanted to. I guess they thought they were trying to either pull one on the fast one on the audience, or they just couldn't figure out how to make Commissioner Gordon's daughter Batgirl. Which, if the '66 movie can, or '66 show can pull it off, then yeah, they could have done it. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, again, because of the script, there wasn't much to work with. There was some chemistry between O'Donnell and Alicia Silverstone. Not much, because it was kind of forced. You expect, the two young leads to fall in love, and that part just kind of seemed a little forced. And it was, wasn't much for them to work on. I mean, if they were given like their solo outing, that right there, I think they would have worked really well if they were given like a solo movie to work together. But I think that, it could have worked. I mean, if the script and everything in the Batman Forever and it worked, and if the movie was even a bigger success than it should have been, I'm sure we would have gotten a Batman or a Robin and a Batgirl spinoff. But, it is what it is. And it's one of those, alternate reality what ifs. Now, visually, this movie was shot very similar to Batman Forever. The shots kind of resembled each other, the lighting and on all that. Again, not a lot of the sets, I guess because they destroyed them earlier, because they didn't think that there was going to be another one, or that they were hoping, but they just didn't know. But I will have to say, though, the Batcave looked even better than the previous film. Had more character to it, and it just, again, looked more lifelike. But in the opening of the film with the title sequence, just like, in Batman Forever, really started revving you up and getting you excited for this film. And then, of course, it started off just almost similar, this time with Robin and Batman watching the Batmobile, the new Batmobile coming up from the ground. And when Chris O'Donnell looks over at Batman and says, "I want a car. Chicks dig the car," which was a throwback from the previous film. And you get the beginning Easter eggs of a DC cinematic universe here when Batman looks over at Robin and goes, "This is why Superman works alone." That kind of got everybody jarred up a little bit. But after that, when the movie kept going into the museum and they were meeting up with Freeze, and the way the lines were starting to be delivered, it was just... and I knew there was something wrong when Robin came crashing through that door and left a Robin logo in the door, an imprint of the Robin logo for this movie. I knew then that I don't think this is going to be good. I stayed there in the theater, but it just didn't get better. Visually, yeah, everything looked cool. I mean, as I said, I've given my thoughts on the costumes. And again, Schwarzenegger. Oof. Now, we get 3 villains in here. We get Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, and you get Bane in this movie. The concept of 3 villains, it just, I don't know. It can have, unless it's a team and stuff like that, it can work. But, Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze, they were just too much of a mismatch pair. And you put Bane in this, and, well, when it comes to the character Bane, I have to, I think when it comes to Bane, a few years ago when I started this channel, I was at this place called the Ocala Comic-Con. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd year for it. Chuck Dixon was there. Chuck Dixon was mainly responsible for the existence of Bane. He was the co-creator. He came up with the original concept, and I interviewed him on that channel, and his favorite version of Bane is, of course, the animated series Bane. After I got done interviewing, they thought, I'm like, well, what did you think of Batman or Rob? He says, let's stop right there. That was an abomination, and I was so mad. Now I met the guy. He said, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he did meet the guy who played Tyler. Can't remember the guy's name. He's no. Sadly, he passed away before the movie came out. That played Bane, but he thought he was a really nice guy, but boy, he really, really hates this version of Bane, and I don't blame him because I didn't know who Bane was, I'll be honest. And I did some research and realized, wow, did they screw this Poochie up real good. And it just, having him more or less as a henchman, and the fact that Bane is a very methodical and highly educated intellect, and, and is very precise in his dealings with Batman, and the fact that he was the man that broke the bat. It was a missed opportunity. This could have been a really great solo movie, which I eventually did with years later. But now, as I said, what Joel Schumacher's comments about Uma Thurman, how he thought she was most glamorous looking woman in Hollywood, can't really argue. I mean, those are fighting words when it comes to yelling that out loud in a Hollywood throwdown. But Uma Thurman, she they made her look very glamorous in this film. Her acting was very catch and miss. I mean, it could have been, if it was more dramatic, it would have been so much better. But they had her really overact in a lot of the scenes as his character. I mean, they had her really being that wedge, that causing a bigger wedge in between Batman and Robin, trying to lure Robin basically to his death, but trying to, foil the plans of Batman and Robin by trying to seduce the Robin character, which, again, if the things were, this movie was kept more on a serious tone and darker, basically what we got in the previous film, her performance would have been just a knockout of the park. Now, I know that Uma Thurman's a natural blonde, but as a redhead, she was absolutely stunning in this film, and the costumes, and they got everything right when it came to the costumes and the pizzazz that comes sometimes along with Poison Ivy in the comics. But it just, again, if they had just taken this film a little more serious in tone, her performance would have been, so talked about. But again, it is what it is. But she did go on to, redeem herself, in my eyes, when it came to Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. Now, they had to back a boatload of truck up to Arnold Schwarzenegger to play this role. I was kind of hoping, when I heard that Mr. Freeze was going to be used, I was hoping Bruce Willis, because I could have seen him playing a little bit more. Back then, Bruce Willis was still acting. But, I mean, there was just hearing him, saying, "Hey, everybody, chill," and "The Iceman cometh." Those are my bad Schwarzenegger impersonations. Trust me, there's going to be more, folks, but you won't send me to the cooler. And I used to bug my brother about this all the time. He didn't like this movie either, but there was a scene that right as Batman and Robin thought they were about to capture Freeze, and Mr. Freeze froze Robin, and he says, "Chill out, bird boy." And I would say that around my brother or some two other people, and my brother would just start giggling because he got the reference, and nobody else did. Nobody got anything reference-wise when it came to the two of us. But now the costume, I swear, it was like watching the Ten Woodsmen on steroids. It was cool. The neon parts were cool, but it just, again, Schwarzenegger, and you could, and he was still paid a lot of money, but he had to stand in for a lot of his parts that he's not speaking in, or the publicity stills that he was didn't have to be in. The majority of the time, that was not Schwarzenegger in this movie. Even Kristen O'Donnell would say, like, I don't remember shooting. We never shot a scene together. We hung out. We talked a lot. But, unless, he had a speaking role, he was not in that suit. And he got paid a lot of money for just being there, basically, is the best way I can describe it. But it is what it is. Now, when it comes to this movie's Batmobile, It's a soup-up version of the 1966 film Batman, Batmobile. That's all I can say. It's cool looking, but it was unnecessary. They really could have just used, say, hey, Batman rebuilt the Batmobile that got exploded in the last film, and, there you got a Batmobile. You didn't have to waste money. Again, unnecessary suits, those other suits that were with the silver linings that you saw earlier in this video really wasn't needed. It was just a waste of money, and they pushed in production. Again, it just, they were throwing way too much money, and it was a balloon budget, and it's one of the reasons why this film lost a good portion of money in the box office. I'm sure, if it still would have dropped if they were still presented the way that they were presenting it. But again, those were the factors. This movie is high, should be, taught in schools, in film schools, about studio interference. That it's really, it still resonates to today, when it comes to the DCEU, how the studio interference, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and too many wants by the studio of wanting to push their agenda. But, the studio, they wanted a more family-friendly Batman. So, and a toyetic Batman so they can sell those toys. But I don't know if they did, because I saw Batman and Robin merchandise on the shelves for a long time. So, but again, right when you had how the trailer looked good, and the beginning of the film, of course, those opening credits got you all ribbed up and ready, but as I said, for me, as soon as as Robin crashed through the door and left that Robin imprint in the door, I knew this was not going to be good. It's one of those films I literally walked out. I did not know what to say. I mean, people were walking out silent, literally. And the only other time that happened was in Schindler's List. And I don't mean to compare these two movies together. But nobody walked out talking about it or looking at each other, like nodding, like, improvement. People walked out just stone cold silence. Like I didn't know what to think when I walked out of the theater. I sat there. At the time I used to smoke, and I was waiting for my dad to come pick me up, and I'm thinking, I have no idea I have no thought on this. And I came home. My brother was waiting for me because he hadn't seen it yet. It was opening day. He usually waits a couple days. And he asked me, like, dude, what was it like? What was it about? How was it? I'm like, I couldn't think. I literally could not comprehend a thought about this film or opinion. I just couldn't. It took me a while. I had to watch this movie again to really, and my brother came up with a logical conclusion. He said, this film feels like this is all a bunch of deleted scenes that weren't good enough to even go on a supplemental materials. And that's how this film felt. This movie was it killed the franchise. George Clooney still apologizes today. I mean, again, this was studio interference, studio, jumping off at the hip and, shooting, pulling their gun out before that was ready, and not having the ammo. And it's sad because, they really, they had something. I mean, I didn't mind that being the flashy lights and stuff like that, and the way it was, it gave a different style, like Batman and Forever, but it just had that serious tone, like Batman Forever. It was a good mixture, but it just, the script wasn't ready, and again, studio interference. But, those are my thoughts. Kept it lowbrow. Usually I'm going on a wild rant about this horse shit of a film. And I don't really cuss much on this, but this movie's a piece of shit. I mean, yeah, I owned it on DVD. I only got the DVD or Blu-ray just to have the extra footage and everything when it comes to the documentaries about the making of this. But, God, I mean, this movie really sucks. And I hate the fact that it killed the franchise. And again, I don't blame Joel Schumacher. I don't blame George Clooney. I don't blame Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't blame anybody. They did their jobs. They were hired to do a job. They were ordered to do something by the studio. they delivered, and the studio shot themselves in the foot on this. Everybody seemed to have recovered fine. All the actors, they all seemed to recover. Schwarzenegger became a governor eventually of California. Clooney is literally, Hollywood royalty with an Oscar win and Oscar nominations, and become a great director. Alicia Silverstone and Chris O'Donnell's careers cooled down a little bit, but they made success in else places in television and stuff, and they're still out there, and they still got a career. Uma Thurman, went on to go into Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, and still have a career. So everything was, but sadly this timeline was, it ended, and we didn't get another Batman film for at least another 5 or 6 years. But that's my opinion, folks. I'm sure there's people out there that liked this film and thought it was okay. The soundtrack sucked. I will say that too. The soundtrack sucked. I mean, I was going to do a separate video that's just all about the music of the Batman films, but I will say the soundtrack sucks for Batman and Robin. It wasn't as good as Batman Forever. Maybe I would say the Smashing Pumpkin song, the beginning, the middle is the end, or whatever. I can't remember the name of the song right now, but that has an alternate version, which is actually killer. I mean, but again, but what are your thoughts, folks? Tell me on the comment section down below, and let me know what your thoughts are on Batman and Robin. If you like it, that's cool. If not, tell me the horror that you felt going through the viewing of this film for the first time. All right, folks. Well, that's all the time I got. That's the end of episode 24, part 2 of the Movie Dawgs show. And we're going to be continuing on with the countdown. We're going to be talking about the redemption of Batman when it comes to the vision of Christopher Nolan. All right, folks. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button, like this video, share it all across social media. And once again, folks, I appreciate you watching. And please keep on watching, folks. Bye.